Jimmy Kimmel, the sharp-witted host whose blend of irreverent humor and heartfelt monologues has defined late-night television for nearly 2 decades, found himself thrust into an unprecedented crisis in a most unglamorous setting: his office bathroom. It was a moment that encapsulated the absurdity and emotional whiplash of show business, where one minute you're scripting punchlines to skewer the powerful, and the next you're barricaded in a stall, absorbing the gut punch that your entire program, your creative sanctuary, your professional lifeline, is being yanked off the air indefinitely. Kimmel, ever the storyteller, recounted this bizarre sequence of events with his signature mix of candor and comedy during a candid appearance on a rival's show, turning personal turmoil into a narrative that resonated far beyond the comedy circuit. What began as a routine afternoon devolved into a cascade of disbelief, logistical chaos, and familial absurdity, laying bare the precarious tightrope late-night hosts walk in an era of corporate caution and cultural flashpoints. The afternoon in question unfolded with the mundane rhythm of a typical production day. Kimmel, immersed in the meticulous craft of monologue writing, a process he likened to typing away like a man possessed, was deep in the trenches of preparing for that evening's taping. The clock ticked toward 3 p.m., a mere 90 minutes before the cameras would roll on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the ABC staple that had evolved from a scrappy upstart in 2003 to a cultural juggernaut, outlasting predecessors like Jay Leno and even challenging the dominance of network giants. His office buzzed with the familiar hum of collaboration, writers pitching zingers, producers coordinating guest segments, and the faint echo of laughter testing the airwaves. It was the kind of controlled chaos Kimmel thrived in, a far cry from the solitary vulnerability of his stand-up roots or the high-stakes gamble of his early hosting gigs. Then came the interruption, a phone call from the upper echelons of ABC, the network that had nurtured his rise from ESPN sidekick to Emmy-winning MC. Such calls were anomalies. Kimmel quipped that the executives didn't even know I was doing a show, most days, a nod to the autonomous bubble late-night creators often inhabit. The summons carried an undercurrent of urgency that propelled him toward the only semblance of privacy available: the bathroom. In a detail that would later elicit groans and guffaws from his audience, Kimmel described ducking into this makeshift confessional, phone pressed to his ear as the door clicked shut behind him. It was here, amid the sterile echo of tiles and the distant murmur of his team, that the hammer fell. The executives, their voices measured yet firm, outlined their concerns. The content slated for that night's episode teetered too close to a powder keg of controversy, risking backlash in a media landscape hypersensitive to offense. "We want to take the temperature down," they explained before delivering the verdict. The show would be preempted indefinitely, a suspension that felt less like a pause and more like a guillotine. Kimmel's immediate reaction was a visceral one, a spontaneous boo that escaped his lips and mirrored the crowd's later outrage. He pushed back, articulating what any artist in his position would. Pulling the plug wasn't just logistically disruptive, it was a betrayal of the very ethos of late-night satire, to poke at the powerful without fear of reprisal. "I didn't think it was a good idea," he recalled, his tone laced with the frustration of a democratized voice suddenly muzzled. But democracy, it seemed, had its limits. The network's internal vote went against him, a corporate tally that underscored the chasm between creative intent and executive oversight. Emerging from the bathroom, Kimmel faced the unenviable task of relaying the news to his executive producers, a tight-knit cadre who had weathered scandals, strikes, and shifting ratings alongside him. The room, once alive with anticipation, fell into a stunned hush, the weight of the decision settling like fog. Compounding the surrealism was the timing. By then the studio audience, hundreds of eager fans who had queued for hours, clutching tickets like golden passes to Comedy Valhalla, were already seated, their applause cued and ready. Dismissing them became an exercise in managed disappointment, a scripted letdown delivered by ushers who spun the abrupt end as a vague, technical issue. Kimmel, lingering on the cavernous set for what felt like an eternity, absorbed the emptiness. Empty seats staring back like accusatory eyes, cue cards fluttering and used in the draft from air vents. He departed hours later, the drive home morphing into a gauntlet of media frenzy. 20 paparazzi vehicles tailing his SUV, TMZ operatives darting into traffic like urban wildlife, even helicopters chopping overhead in a scene ripped from a bad action flick. It was a stark reminder of fame's double bind, the adoration that fuels the work and the scrutiny that devours it in crisis. Arriving home, the emotional aftershocks rippled into the domestic sphere. Kimmel and his wife, Molly McNenny, a fellow comedy writer whose partnership has been the quiet anchor of his public persona, found themselves shaken, the term carrying layers of vulnerability rarely glimpsed on his on-air facade. Their children, blissfully oblivious to the adult world's machinations, injected moments of levity amid the tension. Their 11-year-old daughter, in a gesture of precocious solidarity, offered to hawk her prized Labubu dolls, those quirky collectibles that had become a tween obsession, to ease financial woes, a heartbreakingly sweet misapprehension of the stakes. The younger son, opting for the unfiltered chaos of youth, shed his clothes and careened through the house in naked exuberance, a whirlwind that briefly pierced the gloom with unadulterated joy. These vignettes, shared with wry affection, humanized Kimmel's ordeal, transforming a professional nadir into a tapestry of familial resilience. The ensuing days blurred into a self-imposed lockdown, a jail of silence where public statements were verboten, yet the phone lines burned with urgent calls, from agents strategizing next moves to allies in the industry offering solidarity. Kimmel, no stranger to adversity, having navigated health scares, political firestorms, and the relentless churn of weekly deadlines, grappled with the isolation. Late-night television, once a bastion of unfiltered commentary, had long been navigating treacherous waters. The rise of streaming fragmented audiences, the politicization of humor post-2016, and networks' growing aversion to anything that might alienate advertisers or ignite social media infernos. Kimmel's show, with its blend of celebrity banter and pointed political jabs, had occasionally brushed these edges. Think his Oscar-hosting gigs or segments lampooning former presidents. But this suspension marked a new low, a preemptive censorship that chilled the genre's soul. Reflecting on the broader implications, Kimmel's tale illuminates the fragility of artistic autonomy in a risk-averse era. Late Night, born from Johnny Carson's sofa-side charm, evolved through David Letterman's irony and Jon Stewart's indignation into a fourth estate of comedy. Hosts like Kimmel,